Welcome, Sasha.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
Oh my gosh, thank you for reaching out. I was so excited to get your email. Thank you for being patient with me as I traipsed through Paris before we were able to actually get this scheduled and situated. But I really wanted to spend time with the book and I didn't want to rush through it. And I'm really glad I did because it was a delightful read. It's a nice,
So much.
cozy read for anybody who likes a cozy book. But truly an intriguing mystery too to keep you going along. So before we dive into like any of the content of the book, I would just love for you to talk about where this came from. Like, where did this idea originate for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing I thought is, what are the stories that make me feel the most excited and the most invigorated? And I immediately thought of kind of the heist crime caper story. There's something so exciting about people with amateur backgrounds who've never pulled off a heist, just pulling off this larger than life caper and pulling off these amazing antics. And I really wanted to give readers this sense of joy and playfulness. I think sometimes people feel like they need permission to feel that way
Yeah.
and they don't build it into their everyday lives, and it's such an important thing. So I wanted to give people that sense of escape, that permission to be playful and have fun and to laugh. But also, I really wanted to give people the opportunity to feel more daring and take more risks in their everyday life. Obviously, not all the way to the level of a heist, but through our main character, Jennifer, and kind of that evolution that she goes through. Starting as someone who is more timid, who's not taking risks, she's not breaking any rules, and she evolves into this really empowered woman who is able to do things that used to scare her, and she's pushing herself every day. And so I wanted to encourage women to do the same thing in their daily lives. Like, what is it that I've been wanting to do that I know would make me feel alive, but I've been holding myself back? Let me take those additional steps. Let me push myself. I can do this. So that's kind of the vibe and the goals that I had when I started to write.
I love that. Yeah, everyone loves a heist story. I say, as somebody who was in Paris 6 weeks ago, and there was a literal daylight robbery at the Louvre. So, but it draws that attention, right? It really does. And I think these are stories too that I'm also drawn to. Like, one of my favorite franchises that also just had a movie come out is Now You See Me, Now You Don't. I don't know if you've seen those movies, but I just gobble this kind of stuff up, and I think a lot of us do because I think there is something, like you said, in the permission to do something daring and sort of this perhaps like exhibitionists in us, that want to be seen in a certain capacity. And I love that Jennifer is the character that sort of leads us through it. And I love that it's a caper and like this heist story that centers around two women and two friends. But Jennifer, I think, is a really fascinating character. And, where we meet her in the beginning of the story, like you said, where she's kind of fumbling her way through, running barefoot from the scene of the crime, sort of, in the beginning of the book to, where she ends up. I think it's incredible. And I just love, obviously, as a feminist podcast, I love when women are centered in something and when women are centered well. But more than anything, like something that I truly, truly love is when we see women in community with each other, women in friendships that feels supportive and authentic instead of these like tension competitive points, which is what we tend to get in the media. And I think Jennifer and Nari's story is just so comforting because it feels, much about their lives is very unrealistic, but to me. But I think that their dynamic and the way that they experience their friendship is so comforting and nurturing and familiar. It feels like, you could be thrown right into their dynamic with a glass of wine in their kitchen, having these kind of conversations with them. And I just really appreciate that it's women centered in the story, because it's often not. So, we usually leave the heist stories, not all of them, but a lot of them, to men. So, obviously the emotional foundation of the book is this story between these two women. And can you talk a little bit about their friendship? Can you talk about where that came from? And is it inspired by anything? Inspired by like a relationship that you have in your own life with friends of your own or anything like that?
Absolutely. So first off, thank you so much for your kind words. And I totally agree. I mean, for me, the theme of female friendship is something that has enriched my life so much and has pushed me forward growth wise, given me so many fantastic, adventurous, fulfilling, amazing experiences. And so I'm extremely grateful to my female friends for that community and for building that with me, and I'm super happy about that. And so I really wanted to reflect that in the book. And one big thing that was important to me was to show the contrast between Nari and Jennifer. And I think they're very different in a lot of ways. But Jennifer she starts off as this wholesome daydreamer. She's kind of timid. She's never broken a rule in her life. And Nari, on the other hand, is this wild, scheming, freewheeling entrepreneur who's constantly coming up with new ways to make money. And, they're not always legal. But what I think is so exciting about their relationship is that, it's clear the ways that Nari gives to Jennifer and the way that she pushes her, by following her dreams, not being scared, putting herself out there. Nari definitely encourages and inspires Jennifer a lot. And Jennifer has entrepreneurial dreams of her own. And so being around a friend that's reaching these heights and doing these amazing, innovative things is really good for her in terms of helping her push herself and put herself out there. But I also think that on the other hand, Nari really needs like this down-to-earth person, this really warm presence in Jennifer that can help her to cultivate that more in her own life. And I think in my own personal experience, I've gained a lot from being friends with people who are very different from me. They have different perspectives, different experiences, and they can really expose me to a lot of new ideas and help me to grow. And so I really wanted to showcase that in their relationship. They're contrasting in a lot of ways, but they give so much to each other, and that's what keeps their friendship going. So yeah, I totally agree with what you said, that female friendships are so enriching and not always showcased the way that they should be. And so that was an exciting and important thing that I wanted to write about.
Yeah. And something that I love too is, Nari's got these ambitions, but she mentions her mom, and it's not really a competition with her mom, but sort of this like push to be better because her mom was also this incredible entrepreneur. We get like the sense that also maybe some under the table dealings there, but just having this other woman that is mentioned in the story as sort of like I don't want to say a shadow over Nari because it doesn't really feel that way, but this umbrella that is sort of encompassing, her own ambition and where she wants to keep pushing herself as an ambitious woman with an incredibly, I will not call my mom ambitious in all the same ways that I am. I think we're very different in our ambitions, but my mom is a very hard worker. And I grew up seeing that drive in her. Both of my parents are very hard workers, but, you see it. I think also as a woman now in my 30s, looking at my mom, I see the different type of hustle, which is like there's a career hustle there, a financial hustle there, and also the domestic side. And so I think there's just like this appreciation. I love that there is this, other character that we get in Nari's mom, who is influencing this drive that she has. And I thought that was a really nice touch too, because it's not this, my dad owns this business and so I'm taking over the family business. Like I am, but it's my mom's. I get this from her. And I thought that was a nice, linked this idea of feminism to. It just felt very thought out that the female characters were so central, even when they're not the center characters. And I really, really enjoyed that. So will we ever get a book on Nari's mom?
It's so funny that you ask that, because throughout the writing and the editing process, I actually had a really long backstory for Hannah, who is Nari's mom. It was probably about 80 to 90 pages.
Oh,
And
okay.
I could have gone on forever. I loved her backstory. Basically, it starts off with, her childhood in Seoul. I'll tell you what it was, because it might end up changing, but she sells dumplings to her classmates. Her mom makes dumplings, and she and her siblings sell them, and she's way better at it than they are. And she has a knack for entrepreneurship. She's great at selling. That turns into something a little bit more black market as she gets older. And she decides to leave that behind, clean herself up. She goes to medical school, and then she moves to the US and has trouble practicing, getting licensed in the US. So she comes back into the black market, and it's her story of, her journey and her experiences, the capers that she goes through, all of the wildness. It was so fun and exciting. I loved it. The readers loved it, but it just didn't add to the story arc. It was way too long of a detour. So that got cut. And I would love to, in the future, turn that into a prequel so that readers can enjoy and get excited by, all of the texture of Hannah's backstory and how that led to Nari's childhood. And
I love that. I love that it's dumplings. I'd be buying dumplings from her all the time. That it adds, though, also the fact that it's her mom cooking. Like, again, even in that, it's this generational between the lineage of the women, which I love. But, this goes into something that I think is a really hot topic in the book community right now. I don't know how deep your roots are into, like, Bookstagram or, like, Book Talk, to which mine are endless. It's like all I consume. So that's part of why I started this podcast. So, these morally gray characters are something I think we've always been fascinated with as like a pop cultural phenomena, but in particular, I think there's something really interesting about the moral ambiguity of this story in particular, maybe, Hana's story, if we get it. And I think that there is this, we're rooting for something that is ethically ambiguous, and yet the cause or the thing that they're doing is actually rooted in something justice oriented. And so I don't know how you would describe them, if it's like the anti-hero or like a vigilante, right? Kind of like a Batman. Like, we agree with what you're doing. We don't necessarily agree with like the methodology of how we get here. And I think that's what makes, oftentimes we talk about this with villains. I think, a villain with like I don't know how familiar you are with Marvel, but in Black Panther, there is a villain called Killmonger, and he's fighting for racial justice and racial equity. And it's like, you believe in the cause, you don't believe in the approach. So, although a caper and a heist is much more fun, in a lot of the cases, and they're certainly not villains. We're not looking at the story through the lens of like, these are villains, but they are doing something that you're like, okay. There is some legal ambiguity there. And I think that's what makes it so cozy. But, what is the process or the intrigue, perhaps, of writing characters who do have these strong roots in, like, a cause that is actually something to get behind? Here comes my co-host. This is Watson. Watson's my little co-host. So that was a nice little detour for anyone that'll be watching this. But so can you dive into that just like a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think what ties a lot of these stories together is that, as humans, we see so much injustice and corruption around us, and you have that desire to fight back. You have that desire to do something. Yeah. And a lot of times you may feel like this issue is so big, or the villain is so big. How could you ever make a difference? And how could you do something without breaking the rules? What ways and tools do you have to fight back? And a lot of times it feels like you just don't have the power that you wish that you did. So there's something so empowering about seeing a story and being able to live that vicariously through other people and seeing them finally fighting back, finally doing that rebellious thing that you wish that you could do, and being able to experience it through them without, accruing a record, without putting yourself in danger. There's just something that feels so good and so exciting about that. So I think for me, it's a lot of it is kind of that escapist. Here's something that I would like to experience. So let me give readers the opportunity to live that, that fulfillment of being able to finally fight back. And another theme that kind of ties in with the heist is financial empowerment, both for the women that they are fighting for, as well as the women in the central heist story, especially Jennifer. Jennifer's faced a lot of financial issues in her own career. She hasn't gotten the raises that she deserves. She's underpaid. She's been in this job for 10 years, and they're exploiting her too. It's not to the same degree or in the same way that they're exploiting these other women, but it's still very real. And so I think that the liberation of financial freedom, especially for women, is something that means a ton to me and is something that I wanted to feature as a central focus of the story. Also, to give women that experience of feeling like, hey, I can fight back. I'm worth way more, and I'm going to go out there and I'm going to take it, and I'm going to accomplish that because I deserve it. And that's another theme that I wanted to reflect.
Yeah, I mean, what an incredible job. I love, especially this time of year. I know this isn't when we first started this conversation, but, we're recording this right around the holidays where you're seeing this exploitation, this corporate exploitation, like the most. And so reading this actually for me was like apropos in the timing of where we are right now, where we are in the world in general. And also, in this sort of push for like the holidays and the consumption of the holidays. And, all the people that are just like working so hard to get all of this stuff out there and getting paid like nothing to do it. I really, really just thought that, rooting for these characters, especially for Jennifer, who you see from the beginning of the book has her own ambitions, and from the beginning of the book that a part of the barrier to those ambitions is her financial security. So I love that Nari sort of pulls her into this world, and it's almost, it's almost like Nari, I don't want to say like wants it enough for her, but it's sort of like my cup overfloweth. So like, here you go. And then Jennifer, obviously, it's not even just that Jennifer gets pulled into it. It's that she's good at it. Yeah. She discovers something about herself. And, this opens up a pathway to that ambition. You can't be somebody who is ambitious and be out of touch with, where you can't just stay in your comfort zone, I guess, and be somebody who is ambitious. It takes going over the edge to be able to accomplish something or achieve something, much like I would assume writing a book and publishing it. And I just am really proud of her. I think her journey is incredible, and I think Nari as sort of this beacon or this guiding light that pulls her into this world and not just only supports her, but I think sees Jennifer's vision and wants it for her and wants it for both of them, I think is just such an incredible testament to their friendship, which is already so fun and light and jovial and, again, just very much like girlfriends, really hanging out. They get dressed together. They, they know each other's preferences for stuff. And I just really enjoyed their friendship, and I enjoyed the way that they approach this heist together with the other people that are included. But it's really at the end of the day Jennifer's story and how she kind of comes into it, and how Nari, I think, supports her in it and roots her into this vision of what her potential could be.
Yeah,
she's such a great character. Both of them are wonderful together, but I love the depth that you bring to this.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
You're welcome. So I would love to talk a little bit about the diversity of the book because the book is really, really diverse. And one of my favorite scenes is actually like really early in the book when they're at the Korean barbecue, which I just love that they like just have this luxury party at a Korean barbecue place, like my dream. And I love that there's this part where Nari is looking at the artwork and she is recognizing herself in the artwork. And it's not this huge scene or anything like that. The Korean barbecue is important, but, the fact that she just has this moment where she acknowledges herself and sees herself in the artwork, to me, is one of those moments where you get this acknowledgement of the diversity that is happening in this book. And so we have two different characters. We have a character in Jennifer who is Black American, I don't know. And then we have Nari, who is of Korean descent. And we get other characters in the book who are also quite diverse and from different places in the world. And so I just would love to know, where that was inspired from and what drove you to create a book that was so inclusive, so incredibly inclusive.
Yeah, thank you. I think diversity plays a super important role in the book, but the first most important focus is the story and how incredibly amazing and dynamic and fantastic these women are. And so I wanted to tell the story of incredible people from diverse backgrounds that don't necessarily, there are lots of stories told about women of color and diverse backgrounds, which are fantastic and need to be elevated. But we just need more of them because society still is trying to put women in a box and say, you're able to be this or accomplish this because of whatever characteristics you have. And I think that doesn't reflect real life at all.
Yeah.
But stories have so much impact on how we see the world and how we see each other, how we see people's potential. And so you have these institutions in society holding people back, especially women, but definitely men too, because they assume certain things about them. And so I think that storytelling plays a really important role in terms of changing people's perceptions, helping people to feel more empowered about themselves when they see themselves represented in an awesome role. We just need more of that. And so that was important to me. And, I've been inspired and love so many women of color that are entrepreneurial, innovative, pushing boundaries, doing courageous, awesome things in their everyday lives. And so it's kind of a love letter to all of those people that have influenced and pushed me to grow, that have made me laugh, that have taken me on adventures. We've done amazing things together, that I just wanted to embody that experience of fun and joy and playfulness and, put women of color at the center and, just show how awesome and fantastic our country is, that we have so many people of so many backgrounds and diverse experiences and perspectives, and we make each other so much better and stronger from the difference that we bring to the table. So I think that the characters are very fortunate to have each other and to have these different perspectives, and I just wanted to express that in the book, I guess.
Yeah, I love it. And the cover art, which is incredible. The cover art has Jennifer on the cover, and it's just a beautiful cover. Like, you don't see, I guess I read this digitally, but if I had seen this in a bookstore, I would have stopped. Because the colors are right, the picture of her is, very front and center, but you get the kind of cozy heist piece in it too. But the cover in and of itself is beautiful, and I just love how these women are in this story, and their race and their nationalities and their backgrounds are mentioned, but it's not a struggle piece. It's not, something that is like weighing them down. It's just something that is simply acknowledged and reflected. And I think that the cover is one of those things where you see that really clearly, because the cover is really fun and poppy, and it gives that sense of like, hey, this is about somebody who is diverse and maybe a little bit different than you, but it's got the girly pop kind of vibe to it to pull people in. And I just thought the cover was incredible as well. Who did that cover for you? Did you do that cover?
Thank you. No, I wish I had that talent.
Me too.
That was Marina Druckmann. I was looking for, cover artists that had gotten awards, that were great at what they did. And I saw her covers and they just were so different and unique. And so I sent her an email. She was very responsive, and it was an awesome process to work with her on the cover because, first of all, she read the entire book. Many cover designers don't do that.
Yeah.
She took inspiration from the actual book because Jennifer is a history nerd. She loves historic comics. She even is creating her own comic book series. And so Marina said, I want to take the inspiration from this comic theme and kind of bring that to the cover and bring that style and that vibe. And so it kind of grew from there. And then she and I went back and forth a lot to refine the design and make sure that everything was reflected that we wanted it to be. And she was super collaborative and open throughout the whole process. So really great experience. I wish I could say that it was mine, but Marina did an awesome job.
Yeah, that's a good point with the comic books, because I just said poppy, but yeah, that style of art is pop art,
Yes.
So it makes so much sense that it would be in that style. But yeah, I just love that there is so much diversity in it, and I love that we, like, again, like I said, that moment where you're getting that hint of reflection where Nari is looking at this art of the women in the Korean barbecue place, and she's acknowledging herself. And what that moment is sort of like breaking the fourth wall with people that are reading this book and seeing it for themselves. So I really, really enjoyed that, and I loved that. I loved knowing that little bit more about her mom, Nari's mom, and knowing that she was selling the dumplings and stuff. I would really love to reread the book now with that in mind, because that's really fascinating to me. I think that adds a lot for me. I don't know. I was really interested in her mom from the first time we saw her, like heard about her. So I think that that's incredible. So each part of the crew, obviously led by Jennifer and Nari, but each part of this crew, of this heist crew, the caper crew, let's call them, they add a specific skill set to this mission. And how did you craft these different personalities, these big personalities, all to come together and create this experience on page for readers?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was important to me as I was developing the other members of the heist crew to give people kind of like these contrasting personalities. But I feel like a lot of their personalities just evolved and grew as I was writing. I would have like an idea about them, and it would grow and it would change who they were earlier, and I'd go back and edit, and it became like this evolutionary process where they became different people the more I edited, and fit their roles better in terms of what they're contributing and what their backstory is and all of that. I actually had a lot of backstory for Martha too that I cut from the book.
Oh, okay.
And I feel like that helped inspire who she was as a character. And actually, I did end up writing a standalone short story that comes before The Sweetest Getaway. It's a prequel, but it's not required reading, and you can read them in any order. It's called A Sweet Scheme. And that is also about Martha and her business partner. They have a mango mocktail business, and a competitor goes after them and tries to take them down. So they put on disguises, they sneak into the headquarters, and they fight back, but they discover this bigger scheme than they realized. They're taking on a lot more than they thought. That kind of tells the backstory of how Martha became so tough, so capable, so incredible. But that was
I
like
love
one of
that.
her first schemes. So I think just exploring them more deeply, the more I wrote, they kind of evolved on their own. And that was a super fun experience. One person that I want to evolve more or explore a little bit more in future books is Lorinda. I think she has a really fascinating backstory. She's really tough. And so I think there's so much there. And they will continue to evolve and grow as people. And I think that the dynamic between them is really fun as well. Seeing their banter, seeing them support each other, push each other through the heist, work through things together. So I'm excited to keep exploring that.
Do you have a favorite character that you wrote?
Oh man, that is really tough. I probably, there might be a tie, but I think the person that I explore the most deeply and who evolves the most is probably Jennifer. So I think she's the easiest person to say, okay, I'm really attached to her, but I do feel close and like I love each one of these people. And I'd love
Hmm.
to spend time with them, one on one and as a group.
I love that. Yeah. I think Jennifer too, for me, it is more of an embodiment of women, like just women as a collective. And so I feel attached to her too because I do this podcast, but in my day job, I am an astrology based life coach. So I have a cool job either way. And I mostly work with women who are in transition. A lot of times, either women who have always had like a creative hobby or an idea for a business that they've never started because they didn't know how or they've never given themselves permission to. So they have that entrepreneurial kick, but they don't know how.
Yes.
Or a lot of women in transition, like career transition, they're ready to stop one thing or, move to a next phase of their life or whatever. And so I get a lot of women in particular, and you hear the same thing over and over again, or I do, which is, I don't know how, or I've never given myself permission, or I was never allowed to, or I have to be the good girl, or I'm too much for people. And it's all the same thing, which is just like, I know I'm capable, but I don't really know how to take this thing that I'm capable of and flip it into something that's meaningful or purposeful. I think Jennifer, in her trajectory of the story, but also the influence of these other women is an important thing. Sometimes when you see what's possible for one person, one woman, it gives you the permission to just try. And I think that's the most relatable part of the story, is watching Jennifer go through, as a woman, that you watch Jennifer go through the story of giving herself permission. And I love that these other characters are there to influence her, but I also like that Jennifer's your favorite, and I hope we get to explore her more because she's a really fascinating character, and she does pop off the page. You resonate with some of the early anxiety of like being in these social situations and how to get out of them. And then, her comfortability as things go on too. So I really enjoy that. But I love that Martha has this standalone book. I can't wait to read that. So I'm sorry, you said it's a novella or it's a book?
It's a short story.
Okay, short story.
I forget how long it is. I think it's a little bit less than 100 pages. So it's enough to like give you a full satisfying arc and an ending and everything.
Okay.
But you can read it in any order. So it's not required for The Sweetest Getaway or vice versa. They're both their own standalones, but it does provide more, interesting textured background into Martha and who she is.
I love it. Speaking of standalones, the ending leaves some wiggle room for more capers, more heists, more adventures with our crew in the future. So are you planning to return to the story or do spin-offs or are you exploring something else? What are you writing right now? Like, I would love for people to hear that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am currently working on book 3. I'm very excited to share that. Yeah. So our heist crew, our core heist crew from the Sweetest Getaway is getting back together for another heist against a new bad guy. They're not working with Johannes anymore, or against, the corporation they're going up against.
Yeah.
And it's in an international setting. I don't want to
Okay.
spoil anything, but
Okay.
they're going abroad, and
Okay.
it's
I
going
love
to
that.
be fun and playful and exciting and full of many of the same joyful themes that were in The Sweetest Getaway. And I'm thinking hopefully we can have that ready by mid next year. We'll see. I don't know. I don't want to promise anything, but that's the goal right now. So summer or a little bit before of 2026.
Okay. I love that. Great.
Thank you.
I think that's great. I can't wait to see where they go. I love it too because again, like you have so many diverse backgrounds that to me it's not so crazy that they would be going abroad somewhere. I hope one day we will get Hannah's story. I don't know why. I don't know why that, just the mention of her was so intriguing to me. But like my little reading ears went up. I was like, oh, that's a character I think I'd be really interested in. So maybe we'll find ourselves in Seoul one day.
Yes, I love that.
So where can people find you? Where can they buy the book? Where can they best support you? What do you want to plug? Plug whatever you'd like to plug.
Thank you. Yes, so you can get both books in the Sweet Escape series. A Sweet Scheme and The Sweetest Getaway are both available on Amazon. There is paperback and ebook formats for both, and I recently released the hardcover of The Sweetest Getaway if you want a little keepsake item for yourself. And then if you'd like to read the first chapter of The Sweetest Getaway for free, you can get it on my website. Go to sashapreston.com/newsletter. And if you sign up for my newsletter, you'll get the first chapter for free, as well as updates, when is book 3 going to come out? I'm also currently working on the audiobook for The Sweetest Getaway.
Yay.
Yes. So stay tuned to my newsletter to get updates on how that process is going. And then you can be the first to know when it's coming out and all of that. And then you can also follow me on social media under Sasha Preston Writer on all platforms except Twitter, but I don't know who uses Twitter anyways. I don't have any engagement there, but
No more.
you can find me there too if you search Sasha Preston. So those are all of the places.
All right, great. I love it so much. Thank you so much for reaching out. Thank you for allowing me to read the book. I really enjoyed it. I can't wait to read The Sweetest Scheme, and I can't wait to be back in this world with Jennifer and Nari and all of our caper crew and see where in the world they may be going. I'm excited for their continued adventures, and please let me know when it's available. I would love to have you back on and read the book and, talk more about our favorite femme heist crew. I love them so much.
Thank you so much for having me and for all of your kind words. And this was such a great, awesome conversation. I had so much fun, and I would love to come back on. Thank you for the invitation.
My absolute pleasure.